Hi, I'm Artie Valenzuela, and I'm a sports fan. And as I've grown as a sports fan, I've grown to love things like 30 for 30, because it's news on a topic I care about, the dark and dirty world of all things sports. But who the fuck has 30 minutes? And sure, you can watch the Pat McAfee show where you know it for sure smells like a locker room, or you can watch First Take and track Stephen A's hairline go back further than Steph Curry's three-point shot, but nah, you want something real. So here it is, from the stands, short takes on any and everything sports. Made by sports fans, for sports fans. For our first one, we're starting off with a headbanger, concussions in the NFL. CTE has been a lingering issue in the NFL, with a solution more in front of it than a Colts GM wondering why a defensive end is in front of his quarterback. Invest in your future and not your culture, stupid. Your players shouldn't have shorter lifespans than the family dog with diabetes. Now, how do we figure out how the NFL can use their billions to allow us to enjoy Sundays without having to pray outside of Mass? Well, that's what you're here for. It's the NFL who's responsible for Tua Crypt Turf in the Haka. And whether or not you think so, the Illuminati of the multi-billion-dollar science-denying OG Trumpers need to protect their investments by initiating federally mandated policies that includes hits that finally benefit. If you're like me and the millions of other people that need meaning to their weekends, you play fantasy football. And if you're like me, you drafted Tyreek Hill thinking Miami's offense, led by that kid who Me Too'd that lifeguard, would lead you to the road to victory. But if you're like me, after Tua went down, you smoked too much on the road and traded Reek because Skylar and Tyreek sounds more of like a sitcom than an effective passing duo. Now, while I'm currently regretting smoking and trading, it turns out I may not be that stupid. Because while I'm burning brain cells hitting tree, Tua's brain can't take another hit because if he does, he may not be able to pass the Dutchie to the left or right-hand side. Chronic traumatic encephalopathy is a progressive brain condition believed to be caused by repetitive hits to the head. No, not that head. And that word believed is what the NFL is clinging on to harder than Kraft's grip on a massage chair. CTE is the pandemic of the NFL, not just because it's proven to kill the affected, but the people around the affected, but more so because once the NFL thought they kind of got a hold on it, they acted like it was the new normal. Over the past 20 years, we've become accustomed to injuries being a part of the game. Except most of the players in the NFL didn't know CTE was a part of their contract. So now any players that join the NFL after watching Will Smith's concussion, no, not the one he gave Chris Rock, are expected to knowingly accept the fact that you might piss your pants in the middle of the night or scream loudly at the wall in your old age. But hey, you were good at special teams. Some players are actively deciding to not accept this as a part of the game, regardless of what this means for their bank account. Niner fans, remember Patrick Willis and Navarro Bowman? They were awesome until they realized they played for San Francisco, where the only thing not hurt is their pride. So when they got hurt, someone had to make sure we won enough games to draft another defensive lineman, Chris Borland. Chris Borland made a name for himself as the most dangerous man in football, not because he led a top 10 defense in tackles as a rookie, but more so of what he did off the field. Borland was primed to get a hefty extension when he surprised everyone by being the most millennial player ever. He watched the documentary and decided to change his entire life because of it. Borland saw that CTE was a foregone conclusion if he was to just play even one more down of football. Yeah, this wimp barely lasted a year because he was worried about his mental state. Meanwhile, Brady is committing more years to the state of Florida than to a supermodel wife and fully supportive family. Hey, there's no signs of CTE there, right? Hey Brady, maybe all those rings aren't just around your finger, but in your head. Borland decided to exit the game and even give back over 60% of his contract. He didn't care about the dollars if it would never make sense to him. But Artie, it's a part of the game. Football's a violent sport. They're already trying to play two-hand touch with the quarterbacks. Shut up, you ESPN watching dorks. But you make a good point, dork. The rules of change in football are hard to change without losing the violence that makes it worth watching. I want to see a hard hit on Russell Wilson more than Future does. But if it means he may have PTSD on the Queen Sierra, I want to make sure the goodies are protected. The NFL has been hit with roughing the quarterback memes like a Cincinnati GM drafted its left tackle. But the reality is, the concerns for the quarterback needs to cover not just the faces of the league, but to the rest of its brittled body as well. Every player in the league is at risk for a concussion possibility. So changing the rules of taking down QBs can't be the start of something new where we talk about hitting running backs like how we now talk about covering wide receivers. Because God forbid if any of those halfbacks have a career longer than an iPhone's battery. You ever wonder why they buy their linemen Rolexes? They're the only thing protecting them. But no one wants to see hard-hitting football get soft. We love the hits and the big play capability that comes with it. No one's gonna pay for flag football if there's no thongs involved. So instead of fixing your problem reactively, try being proactive. And Whitney Houston said it in her national anthem. I believe the children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. Training at the youth level will create the necessary foundation of proper technique that will ultimately be a higher standard of fundamental football. We need Tim Duncans in the NFL who train on their technique to a fault. So when they're in the moment, muscle memory saves them from becoming a Vietnam vet with a 4.2 40 and hands perfect for gripping necks. The NFL acts like they don't know how to reduce head trauma because tackling can't be too regulated. Meanwhile, the only money that goes into my nephew's football program is my $250. That's not including a visor for his helmet. Help Coach Holmes coach these kids right. He's already coaching after working 2 full-time jobs to help his kids play, and now you want him to be responsible for future Aaron Donald's technique? Youth coaches are farming future abusers domestically, yet the sole reason why has no part in it? Tua got flack for putting his head down on that run. But you can't blame him when he's been trained from his first Kahlua pigskin game to put his head down and get that extra yard. And the NFL has plenty of money to help pay for regulated training. But can it really be that simple? Yeah, it can be. Currently, there's a nationwide certification system for youth coaches, and the NFL has no responsibility in it. It's on the league to take this issue into their hands sooner rather than later. We need a blend of Moranis and O'Neal, a technical coach who loves the game to be played the right way. Violent, icebox and spike, the perfect NFL player. So instead of encouraging kids to play outside for just 60 minutes with flags, train these kids to tackle using their head instead of with their head. Head up and to the side. You already coached us in their yearbook photos. Maybe if we put this in business terms, these kids grow up to end your future employees' careers. And while we're at it, when these kids finally make it to the NFL, let them smoke one. To regulate how your players rehabilitate outside of performance enhancement drugs is an archaic way of thinking, especially if they're just trying to smoke one to help their backs out. I do it every time I watch them play. The NFL currently has an off-season policy where they don't test for weed until the season starts. So basically when the hits are light, hit as much as you want. But when you need it for recovery, you're better off playing in a state where opioids are allowed. And don't forget these people. While the NFL can't control states' rights, they sure as hell can allow their players to smoke where it's legal and have them just worry about the price for the weed instead of because of it. And it's not unprecedented. The NBA has been letting their players cheat since the world reset, and J.R. Smith is currently trying to get drafted again. Now, the NFL must continue its funding into research of CTE. And while I'm hoping for Tua having zero success, which leads to Tyreek having zero success, I'm not trying to be worried about scary terms like secondary concussion syndrome. It's time we look at how to stop CTE instead of how to deal with it. Then maybe guys like Junior Seau will be remembered for how his career ended instead of how his life ended.